What if you could see things on the other side of the world without having any types of hints or clues to what that is? What kinds of things could you do with that? How could that benefit your life? Have you ever heard of remote viewing? And did you know that you don't have to be some crazy psychic to be able to do it? Anybody can learn to remote view. Imagine, how could you remote view for your life or for the lives of your friends or family? Perhaps you can find some winning numbers. Perhaps you can help find people or missing items. There's so many different ways that remote viewing can benefit your life and the lives of those around you, and you can learn how to do it too. Today in Project Beyond, I'm going to be interviewing David Harker, a remote viewer who is not only going to show how to remote view, explain what remote viewing is, and give us some amazing details about it, he's also going to show you how you can learn to remote view today. So get ready, join me. I'm Emma, and this is Project Beyond. David, welcome back. It's great to see you again. I saw you just a couple days ago.
So, yeah, I was given a workshop on beginners, like just dip your toe in the water, remote viewing for Monroe Institute people, people
Mhm.
who've done courses with the Monroe Institute. That was just like a free come along and try it, no pressure, not a structured training course thing, just to like show people everybody can do this, or pretty much everybody can do this anyway. And if you can't do it, you can probably do it with a bit of practice, which is something I like to do as much as I can, because I think there's a real big difference between like reading the science papers that are like, oh, there's anomalous information transfer, or some of this woo-woo stuff is supported by evidence. Well, that's interesting, but it's very like intellectual, isn't it?
Mhm.
Whereas when you do it for yourself, it's like direct first-hand experience. It's real. You can't deny that it's real. And you have a feel for what it's like as well, because I think people expect it to be kind of special or weird or something, or for there to
Mhm.
be like bright lights and trumpets from heaven and stuff, or weird things levitating around or whatever. And well, you tried it, right? It's not. It doesn't feel weird.
No, not at all. I was just kind of this open remote viewing tool 24/7, and I had no idea that was going on. Um, I it would be, but it would just be things like thinking I need to contact my friend, but remembering or like seeing her in a way and just being like, oh, she's at the grocery store in the juice aisle. I'll wait till she gets home. And then I'll kind of like watch her and get home. And then I'll call her up and be like, hey, how you doing? And she's like, yeah, good. Just had to go to the store, get juice for my kids. I'm like, yeah, I know. I already know. But I was like, I didn't know that's what I was doing. I was just had this open attunement, I guess. I don't even know what you would call it, all of the time. And then it just like closed. and and it was after it closed that I realized what I was doing. That was remote viewing. And so I've been on this journey of trying to like figure out how to reopen it. And when I did your class the other day, because I've done a few other, I don't know if they're specifically Monroe exercises. It might have just been like the remote viewing websites that they have out there with like the whole list of numbers and stuff, and you can click and try to see what the image is. And I couldn't do it. Oh, I was so bad. And we were getting together with some Monroe people at a place here in England called Weird, WYRD, the Weird Experience. And we would do a little bit there, and I was doing good with like cards and things with pictures on them, but like the remote viewing stuff attached to a number, I was just like, I can't do it. This, like, I'm so completely disconnected from it. And I was just so closed off. But then when I did your class the other day, I was pretty proud of myself. I got 2 out of 3 pretty well, I think. And what I realized was the way that you explained it and kind of shared. I mean, it helped me tremendously, but it also kind of helped me remember, like, it isn't this big, oh my God, heaven's bells and this and that. It was just, oh yeah, it's like that thought pattern that you just kind of like follow and listen to. So that was really interesting. I'm excited for today and see see if my like being on
Yeah.
screen will turn that off or not.
Oh, the performance anxiety is real. It's always super like,
Definitely.
oh no, I can't do it if people are
Yeah, yeah.
watching. And
Yeah.
then you can, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and if people are watching the video and they see a sudden cut where she's cut a big part out of the video, it's because it didn't work. But
Yeah,
hopefully, we're not going to
yeah.
see that.
I will leave it in because I want people to see like the natural progression of
Yeah.
my journey
I mean,
back
it's
in.
important to note, right, that this is not 100% accurate. This isn't
Absolutely.
like turning on a TV or
Yeah.
something. There is noise in the process, right? There's a
Yeah.
signal to noise ratio, and
Hmm.
there's different things we can do to improve that. And sometimes it's our state of mind. Like if you were there doing psi experiments with like looking at cards or stuff in an envelope and you find that okay, but then when you're using a target reference number to refer to your target, which I'll explain for listeners in a moment, then you're finding, oh, I'm disconnected. But really there's no difference between the two. It's just one of them feels like it should be harder, but you can't see either target. They're both hidden, right? You're being psychic to look at both of them. And our
Right.
awareness is not limited by time or space at all, right?
Hmm.
So there's no reason that one should be more difficult to than the other. It's just
Right.
we get these ideas about what we can and can't do. And I've faced that in my own training and in doing remote viewing, that I've kind of moved on to doing techniques which part of me just thinks are impossible, and my performance has gone right down, and I've had to kind of like work back up and be like, oh yeah, I can do this, and kind of like get step by step. And it's like eventually you end up like, yeah, that was this, it was the same thing all along. It
Mm.
was just the idea that was preventing me. It wasn't like a lack of ability. I think the
Right.
ability is there in everybody, right?
Hmm.
Under the surface is just whether we allow ourselves to listen.
Yep. Yeah. Super exciting.
So we
Well,
should do, before we move on, I think we should do like a little bit of a jargon buster on remote viewing for listeners in case they're not totally
yeah,
familiar.
I think
Because
that's a great idea. And then we can kind of regress and hear your story of how you got here. But yeah, let's start
sure.
there.
So remote viewing is a term which gets kind of abused to mean any kind of like psychic perception or non-local perception or anomalous cognition or whatever. But it's a slightly more specific term than that. Not all psychic perception is remote viewing, but all remote viewing is psychic perception if it's working. So there is a protocol which was developed by the Stanford Research Institute while they were doing a sort of scientific R&D project into like, can we use psychic abilities for espionage and surveillance and that kind of stuff during the Cold War. And they were working, they're basically part of the military industrial complex, right? It's a very sciencey, very left brain, very intellectual kind of environment where psychic is a dirty word, right? You can't have witches scrying tea leaves and tarot cards and automatic writing and channeling and psychic visions, and you can't have any of that stuff, right? So they're framing the whole thing as like hard science. And it's not. Like, you can't divorce the individual from the activity. Like, you as a person who's doing this are intimately connected to what you're doing. But the way they're approaching it was this very like lab experiment kind of way. So if you're trying to prove psychic functioning experimentally, you need to have controls in there to prevent any cheating. So that when your critics, which is like pretty much everybody, looks at the experiment, they can't say, well, the person could have just guessed. Like, for example, with your friend, when you saw them in the juice aisle, it's like you knew it was your friend, you know where they shop, you know what that juice aisle looks like, you've probably been there, you've got loads of information. And while probably it was an event of psychic awareness, a critic would look at that and say, well, you could have just guessed, right? So
Right.
they had to design a protocol for doing this where it was impossible. So that's like the most important part of what makes remote viewing distinct from other psychic non-local awareness kind of perceptual modalities is the viewer is always blind to the target. They're never given any information about what they're going to describe. And there is something that you're going to describe. There is a specific thing, the target, and you got to describe that. If you describe something else, you don't get any points, right?
Right.
And if you think about this from the point of view of like military intelligence, if they want to know where the hostage is located, I mean, brilliant if you tell them about a terrorist attack that's going to help happen next week, but that's not what they wanted. It's not what they asked for, and it is wrong. It's not the answer to the question, where's the hostage, right? So you have to describe a specific thing. And usually, well, historically, that was written on a piece of paper and sealed inside an envelope so that nobody could see it until after the experiment. And they did things like, putting a big pile of these in a safe and then having a third party come and shuffle them around and select them at random so nobody could possibly, they did all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And they moved on to doing geographic coordinates, right? So they would do a latitude and a longitude. So you'd have two numbers, the latitude and the longitude, and they would ask the remote viewer to describe what was there, because they were trying to, well, not replace spy satellites, but augment that data and get data about particular areas. What's in this building deep inside the Soviet Union? What are they up to in there, right? That
Mhm.
kind of stuff. So they had great success with this. They achieved some amazing things, and their critics came along and they said, "Well, I think the remote viewers have in fact memorized every single location on planet Earth." And somehow also know about what's going on inside that hangar in the Soviet Union. And they're cheating that way. So they were like, fine, fine, fine. And they just use random numbers, right? I think they tried encrypting them or something, but after a while they realized these numbers don't do anything, right?
Right.
They're not important for the target. We don't need them. Um, it works, as far as we can tell, it works entirely on intent, right? I'm going to answer your question. And you don't need numbers or target references or latitude or longitude, or you don't even need to write the thing down. All of this is like just administrative stuff, which helps make the process clearer. But the key thing is we describe a specific thing on purpose. We don't know anything about the thing in advance. We write down or otherwise record our perceptions, and then we find out what it was we were supposed to be describing. That's called feedback. And that is what separates remote viewing from any other psychic modality. So you'll notice in that protocol, it does not tell you how you get the data. Okay, so if you follow those steps, you can actually, technically speaking, you could read tea leaves. You can read tarot cards. You could do chicken entrails. You could throw bones. You could read patterns in the clouds or interpret your dreams or go astral projecting. You do whatever the hell you like, as long as you can give me an executive summary that is in English and I can understand it. And you're not giving me a page full of woo woo. You're telling me this is a description of the actual target. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter how you get the data, as long as you can record it and you can present it and be like, there you go, that's what I got. And you can't get your feedback and then be like, oh, well, I think I want to reinterpret this. None of that. Okay. You tell me what it is or you don't. You're right
Mhm.
or you're wrong.
Right.
And through doing that process over and over again, every time you get your feedback, every time you find out what your target was and you compare it to a description, you can see, well, what did I get right and what did I get wrong? And what did it feel like? How did I feel inside when I was doing the bit where I was getting it right? And then you keep going, and then the whole thing goes south at some point, and you start making things up. You go into storyland, right? And you
Right.
can kind of take yourself back and go, oh yeah, I had this little imagination going in my head there, and I kind of didn't notice, and it ran away, and I started, I got attached to the idea that I knew what it was, and then I started making things up like this. I think in the class we did the other day, the first target that we did, um, or maybe I shouldn't say because maybe people are going to go and watch the video and try it for themselves. Nah, we'll say
Go
we'll blow
for
it for you. Well,
it.
we'll only spoil the first one, but the first one was a like a gas stove ring, like the burner lit with the flames coming up. And I think several people had
Mhm.
they got the sound correct, where they could hear the hissing noise that it makes. But then I think at least two people were like, oh, it sounded like the sea, and then they're like, oh, and it's sandy and there's waves and I can hear
Yeah.
birds and stuff, and it
Yeah.
just goes like off on this big thing.
Yeah. I
So
was one of those people. I
oh,
got the
you got the
blue and red
seaside. Yeah.
flame, blue, red. I got the colors perfect. It was black, blue, orange. and white, I think.
Mhm.
And then I got metal, and I got cold and hot, and I got, there was one other thing. Oh, the sound. But then I was like, well, what could that be? And then I started creating the story. I was like, boat and kids and water, and like started creating this beach. But there were a couple others that did the same thing.
Yeah, which was really interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That
it
it
was crazy.
wasn't. It was. I think there was about three people who went off on a little mental holiday to the beach.
Yep.
Um, and a couple of people thought the colors were really reminded them of a sunset or a sunrise because you've got like the blue in the flame with the little red tinge, and it was one person said it was like a sunset in the shape of a daisy flower, which was so poetic and lovely. It was I think that was the most poetic group that I've done this
Aw.
exercise with. That was fun. There's some really beautiful descriptions.
Maybe we should go ahead and you can tell us kind of your story and how you kind of got here, because this isn't your everyday job.
Yeah, when you were doing the careers advice at school, they're not like, "Hey, you could be a fancy psychic." You
Right.
just do this crazy training from these military, it's like, what is this stuff? It's nuts, right?
Yeah.
Um, not a normal career progression. I actually, my background is in like natural sciences and archaeology and software engineering and stuff. I, I, I think 7 or 8 years ago, where are we now? 2026. 7 years ago, I was a software engineer working on like code for a medical mass spectrometer, and I was like super nerdy left brain stuck in my intellect science man, and I just had never considered any of this like woo woo stuff, and
Right.
I didn't exactly like write it off, but I was just like, well, that's not in any kind of science that I know, so it's not real.
Mm.
Which isn't a rational position to hold, but I didn't recognize that as an irrational position at the time. It just I'd never thought about it properly because it was just like, well, that's impossible. So, for whatever reason, all these people are saying all this crazy stuff. It's not because they're right. They're maybe they're crazy or they're delusional or the Barnum effect or whatever. But I hadn't ever examined any of those criticisms of psi phenomena because if you do, you see that actually they fall through and that there really are like there's ample good quality laboratory evidence that these effects are real and you can just do it. You can just do it yourself. And if you follow the remote viewing protocol, you can prove that there's no cheating, there's no guessing, there's no interfering. You can just sit in your house and prove that your awareness transcends time and space to a high standard and just kind of like blow your own mind, which is what I did to myself. Because I reached a point where I kind of had this realization that I'd really missed something major in my understanding of the world. I think partly I was trying to work out like how the hell Trump was the president, and thinking just like I
Don't
really
we
don't
all?
understand geopolitics at all, do I? 'Cause like my first child had been born, and I was trying to think long term about which way the world's going and
Mm.
investing for a future and all that kind of stuff. And I realized like I really don't understand how anything works, and I kind of thought I did. But if a model does not make novel testable predictions, then it's useless, right? And I
Mm.
realized I didn't have any good models of how the world was working. I just felt like I did, which is worse than useless, right? So I was like, well, okay. I realize now that I've missed something major, but I don't know what it is, right? They don't teach us consciousness in school, right?
Right, right.
They just gloss over that major thing. So I kind of went through like all of the crazy stuff on the internet. I went on like a deep dive through all the dark corners of YouTube with all of the totally batshit insane conspiracy theories and I was like, I'm just gonna have to like all of the stuff that I've written off as dumb or fake or stupid. I'm gonna have to go back through all of it and be like a bit more open-minded. And not to be so open-minded my brain falls out, right? To still test things and still demand a standard of evidence, but to just go and find what it is I've missed. So I did, and that took a while. And when you watch all those wacko videos on YouTube, the algorithm recommends you more and more crazy stuff, right? So eventually, Russell Targ's TED Talk popped up in my recommended thing, and it's like banned TED Talk about remote viewing psychic spot, and I'm like, that can't be real. That's crazy. I'm not watching that. And after a couple of weeks, it kept popping up, and I was like, okay, 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 I'll watch it. So I'm watching this, like, no way, that can't be true, bullshit. but I promised myself I was going to be empirical, right? And I had to admit that this was something that I could test experimentally, because a lot of the time, somebody will be like, "Hey, I've got all the answers. I can tell you the secrets about the universe or God or the aliens or whatever weird thing it is you're interested in. You just got to come to my seminar. It's only $600." And it's like, come on, I can't go to all of these stupid, this is not the correct way to gain a deep understanding of the universe, right? So
Right.
I was like, I had this intuitive knowing, I guess, perhaps it was, that this was something which I should be able to test empirically. That
Hmm.
wherever my kind of pursuit of discovering where I'd gone wrong in my understanding of the world was to proceed was via like science, the scientific method, right? Actual empiricism, not taking somebody else's word for it, not listening to, you know, opinion, but like, can we test this? Can we prove it? And remote viewing was the very first thing that I'd come across where it was like, I can actually test this at home. And I don't even need expensive materials. You just need a pen and a paper and to go and find some remote viewing targets online. And the way those work is remote viewing targets have an ID number. Like I was saying, those historically were a latitude and longitude. So it's usually like two, 4-digit numbers, but they're like a phone number, right? They don't give you any information about the target. It's just so that you can match up your notes, your session with the feedback. So you search for remote viewing targets on Google. And I clicked on the first website that popped up, which was Daz Smith's website, remoteviewed.com. And he's got it calls it Target Monkey because it used to be like a thing that would automatically email you targets, so you could practice every day. And I think the email functionality is broken now, but the targets are still there, right? So I just picked one at random. There's a big list of numbers. I picked one at random. I wrote the number down on the top of a post-it note. I didn't even use a full-size piece of paper because I thought this is so dumb it doesn't even deserve a piece of paper. Yeah, whatever, right? This is like only worth one post-it note. And I just thought this is so impossible and so crazy. This is never going to work. And really looking back, like the reason that I was motivated to do it was because I wanted to feel smug when it didn't work, right? I wanted it to fail so that I could feel validated about how well I understood things, despite the fact that my motivation for doing this was a quest to address the fact that I obviously didn't understand things, right? There was that like egoic need to be right. So I did it and it worked. And I was like, what? And the feedback it was a painting of like a scene with some buildings and a bit of a landscape in. And I just put some random lines and shapes on this post-it note in literally 30 seconds and opened the thing up. And it was like, wow, that matches up much better than I would expect by chance. And it
Wow.
wasn't like good enough to change my worldview there and then, but
Hmm.
it like gave me pause. And I had to be like, well, that was not a negative result. I'm going to rerun that experiment. So I think I did like another 50 or something. And like I really believed it was impossible, but I was still doing it. So every time I did it and it worked, it was just kind of like building up this weight of evidence that just because it's impossible doesn't seem to stop it from working. Maybe your worldview is what needs to change, right?
Hmm.
But worldview is a difficult thing to change because our ego is constructed on top of worldview, right? Our ego is a response to the world that we think we find ourselves in.
Hmm.
Like our sense of self is there to interact with other people and our environment. So if you start editing your worldview, it collapses parts of the ego. So in that sense, it is an existential threat, right? Because anything which threatens your understanding of the world threatens the stability of your sense of self, which is why when you come and present people with ideas that they don't like, that they disagree with, they'll often become frightened or angry or suddenly develop amnesia or attack you or laugh at you or whatever, and have very strong emotional reactions
Hmm.
instead of being like, oh, that's interesting. That disagrees with the data that I've seen. Maybe we should look at some original research and have a discussion in order to find truth. It's like, no, 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 you're threatening me. The emotional reaction is kind of the same as just holding a gun to someone's head, right? You're threatening the existence of their sense of self. And the primary drive of ego is to stay the same all the time. Ego doesn't want to change ever, doesn't want to get old, it doesn't want to learn. It's perfect already, damn it.
Yep.
Right. So it just wants to keep everything the same. So it will react and defend itself. when things. So yeah, I was there doing these remote viewing experiments, and like I said, got to like 50, and I was still on post-it notes because I was still like, this is fake, this is impossible, and I'm there like having these absolutely mind-blowing experiences, and eventually kind of was like, okay, this deserves full-size sheets of paper. This is something that I seem to be pursuing. And yeah, it turns out it's an absolute incredible journey of self-discovery and discovery about the nature of consciousness and the self and the universe, and it's just an absolutely wild ride.
Mhm.
And I think I did it for about 2 years, just kind of as a hobby, as a side thing, and was still thinking I was going to stay being a normie and having a normal person job and ostensibly doing normal things. And then I kind of realized that I wasn't. So
Right.
at that point, I decided to invest in some mentorship and kind of really aim to get world class good at remote viewing and really kind of like take it up to a more professional level.
Mhm.
I did, and that journey started about 7 years ago.
Oh,
And here I am today.
amazing. Who did you study with to reach those levels, or was it different kind of?
Well, I mean, I know a lot of experienced remote viewers who I've met just through online communities over the years. My
Mm.
actual mentorship was a guy called Brett Stewart, who was trained by Ed Dames, who was trained by Ingo Swann, who was the guy who came up with controlled remote viewing for Stanford Research Institute.
Wow.
So it's not exactly a an unbroken lineage of like the original truth kind of thing because
Mhm.
everybody puts their own spin on things, everybody changes the methods. Like I say, you could read tea leaves or whatever, right? So some people like to put these remote viewing methods on a pedestal and be like, oh well, I'm doing the only real controlled remote viewing and mine's the best. And this is just like people who are in a cult, right? It's just silliness. Because there's no evidence that any method is the best, right? People can say there's no better method than mine, and they're right because there's no evidence that there's any worse method either, right? This is like learning martial arts. This is like saying that drums is better than piano. It's not. It doesn't even make sense, right? These are ways of developing this skill, but really they're just instructions for how to write a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper. Okay, and
Right.
it's your responsibility as the remote viewer to be introspecting on your process and learning about yourself and learning your inner language and being critical of your experience as you learn. That's what really increases your skill level. So, yeah, I got training there that was like a few months of really intensive, like 2 or 3 hours every day, which is not sustainable, but I was on a real like mission.
Mhm.
And then outside of that, I've been practicing with various people and coming up with my own stuff and doing like collabs and things. So yeah, at the moment, I'm part of this thing called Second House Remote Viewing Group that I've just started up last month. No, we must be coming up on like about 8 months ago now. Um, and we're putting news predictions online for free. We're putting them on YouTube, and we're
Oh,
just
wow.
predicting the future. We are just casually laying down next month's news, and seeing what we think, like financial markets and commodity prices and geopolitics is going to do. Yeah, we don't get it all right, but we get a lot more of it right than you'd expect by chance, right?
Wow.
Which
Is this your
is
YouTube channel?
well, yeah, it's not mine. It's me and a bunch of other people. It
Okay.
was me that originally brought the team together, but we're kind of all contributing to it and bringing our own strengths. So that's Second House Remote Viewing, um, which you can go and find on YouTube if you want to see what's going to happen next month. Um,
Absolutely. Oh my
um,
goodness.
yeah, so I mean, we actually formed that group to do financial predictions. And then we were like, this is kind of boring. Like you can make money with remote viewing, but for complex reasons that are not fully understood, you can't just win the $100 million lottery jackpot overnight.
Mm.
It does seem that there's limits on how much disruption and chaos we can cause with these abilities over a
Right.
short period of time, right? There seem to be guardrails on the
Oh,
universe, which is probably a good thing.
right.
So, but you can get rich slowly. So we brought the group together to do that and then realized that it was kind of boring and unfulfilling and that we'd all like to be doing more interesting work than just predicting whether a stock was going to go up or down or which team was going to win a soccer match, right? So
Right.
Yeah, we branched out into doing news and client work and just like whatever, well, whatever people will pay us for to an extent, and then whatever we find interesting the rest of the time.
Right. That's amazing. I have a question to move forward with that one, but I want to go back again real quick as well. When you first started with the post-it notes and you were just in that mindset of this isn't even going to work, and you were starting to write down the things that were coming to you, did you notice a difference in mindset as you were writing? Like, what was your experience with that?
Well, my intent was just to get something down on the poster because remember the deeper motivation was I'm looking forward to this not working. So I
Right.
wasn't trying to do a good job, which I
Hmm.
think is potentially an advantage because one thing which blocks people or can block people from doing psychic awareness, non-local awareness in general, whether or not that's within the remote viewing protocol, is this idea of like, how do I do it?
Mm.
What am I supposed to do? And that's like, if you look at a picture in front of you and then ask me, how do I look at this? Right? You just point your eyes at it, you just perceive, right?
Yeah.
And it is about where are you putting your attention. So you can say remote viewing training is like an attention management discipline. It's about where am
Mm.
I putting that little point of my awareness. And
Mhm.
as you do it thousands of times and you practice, all different sensory stuff and abstract information and spatial stuff and time and all these different dimensions in which you can move your awareness, you just kind of get the hang of moving it around,
Yeah.
like a remote control toy car, right? And
Right.
you tell it to go somewhere, and after a while, it will just go, and then
Mm.
you just pay attention to what you perceive.
Yeah.
Whereas people kind of feel like I have to do something. I've got
Hmm.
to. There's some technique. I've got to like twist my mind into a funny shape, or I should be seeing a big bright tunnel of light or something. I don't know what. I'm not even sure people know what they think that
Right.
it is that they can't do.
Yeah.
But like, especially people who are very kind of left brain. I know left right brain is not like an accurate model, but I think it's a useful model, right? People who are
Mm.
very intellectual and linear and systematic and kind of thinking through everything step by step and intellectualizing and trying to cram the phenomena of reality into models all the time, right? So people like I was when I was living my old life writing software and doing sciencey stuff all day, right? Um, there's the only if you're used to only functioning from that intellectual left brain mode rather than an intuitive kind of mode, that's the only tool in your toolbox, right? All you've
Mm.
got, everything looks like a nail, and all you've got is a hammer. So if that's your default way of approaching a problem, and then you come to psychic awareness, right? And then it's like, well, okay, what's my checklist? What am I supposed to do inside me? And then somebody says something really unhelpful, like, oh, just sort of go with the flow, just feel. And you're like, well, I can't do that. How do I write that in a checklist? How do I make that circle into a square? Right. And
Mhm.
you can get really hung up on those thought processes. And it's so simple to
Yeah.
actually do the thing, but you have to be able to kind of just put those thought processes to one side. So when I was my very first remote viewing session, scribbling on a post-it note, because I didn't really care whether it was going to work and didn't really want it to, and was kind of looking forward to when it didn't. I didn't have that issue, which if I'd been really hoping it would work, I think I would have done. So
Hmm.
maybe that was
Absolutely.
a coincidence, maybe not.
Yeah, absolutely. I was playing with some cards the other day, just yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, because I'm trying to redevelop my intuition. I think because it used to be so strong and it feels so broken now. I'm trying extra hard. Like I have to get it right. I have to do right, and I'm overdoing it. So I was playing with a deck of cards, like playing a deck of playing cards, and I was like trying to feel, okay, is this one red or is it black? And I was like taking time, and I'd flip it over and be like, oh, I got it wrong. And so I'd put it in a pile, and I'm like, I take time on the next one. I'm like, is it red or is it black? And I'm just like, I'm trying to feel it. Is it hot? Is it cold? And it was wrong and wrong. And finally I was like, you know what? Screw this. And I just went, red, red, black, red, black, red, black. And they were just like right, 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 right. But I wasn't giving my brain any time to like think about it. It was just like the first thing, doon, 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 doon. And as I was flipping the cards, like it was right, it was right, it was right, it was right. So like, oh my God, this is incredible. But it's not giving that ego to jump in and be like, let's think about this and then create that picture that we like to create logically.
Yeah, that was one of the things we covered in the class briefly as well, wasn't it? That imagination has like a little time lag. It takes a couple of seconds to kind of get
Mhm.
spinning to get going on something. So if you move really fast, and just take the first thing that pops into your head in like 1 second after I'm going to ask a question. What color is the target? It's blue. Okay, done. Fine. And then you can ask it again. Are there any other colors? Yeah, it's yellow or yellowy orange umbry sort of color, whatever, right? But you just leave that little window. Whereas if you go, what color is it? And then the answer is blue, but you're like, no, that was quiet. It didn't sound like angels singing in a choir. So that must be my imagination. Was it blue? And maybe everything's blue because there's very often the sky and things. So that's too obvious. Maybe he wouldn't have picked something blue. I'm going to go with orange. I would pick orange if I was, and this like story thing starts going. But if you're just fast, just go red, black, whatever, who cares? With no attachment to outcome as well, because when you were kind of in the like, yeah, screw it mindset, right?
Yep.
You've given up being attached to the idea of being right. You're
Mhm.
not, your ego is not clinging on to that. I've got psychic powers. I can do this. Look at me. Look at me. It's just like, ah, fuck it. Right. So when you release that need to be right, then it allows you to actually be right, because
Right.
when you're this kind of has this in common with the ideas about manifestation, right? That if you're clinging on to wanting something, you are clinging on to being in a state of not having the thing. So if
Mm.
you're I want to be right, I want to do this, you're implicitly saying I'm not right, I haven't done it, I'm not doing it, because that's something you're kind of yearning after,
Right.
whereas really just do it.
Mhm.
Red black, whatever.
Yep. Yep. And you have some connections with the Monroe Institute, right? A little
uh
bit.
I think vaguely. I mean,
Yeah.
only through doing their courses and doing
Okay.
some remote viewing classes there.
All
I'm
right.
not like an employee of them or anything, but
No.
I know Luigi Chambrella, who's like
Mhm.
the main man, the man, Monroe
Have you worked
UK.
with Joe McMoneagle at all?
I haven't, no. I've spoken to him briefly, but I haven't met him.
Right.
But I mean, every remote viewer knows about Joe McMoneagle because he's
Yes.
widely regarded as one of the finest remote viewers ever to have lived.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is a cool guy. But yeah, I met Luigi at a conference a few years ago, and then we were asked to teach a class together on like
Oh.
kind of a crossover between the scientific research and the psychological, spiritual sides of non-local awareness generally.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it was kind of for people who were coming at this stuff relatively fresh, and it was to like provide a grounding where it's like it's not, the science is not going to explain all of it. The woo woo is a rabbit's warren of like conflicting ideas and stuff that doesn't resolve itself intellectually. But
Mm-hmm.
like, here's the landscape. Here's all a bunch of the ideas and how the ideas have evolved over time, and kind of like where the hard science stuff is, and where the woo stuff is, and where the psychoanalysis and psychology kind of ideas are, to just like give people a grounding in the landscape, because it's easy to, if you're a very intellectual person, or if you're a very intuitive person, if you kind of discover this subject matter and you're kind of trying to get a handle on the subject, you're inclined to gravitate towards whatever your favored mode of kind of understanding is. So if you're a real left brain science person, maybe you're going to be much more inclined to just look at science papers, and or if you're a very intuitive person, you're going to go off with all of the like hand wavy stuff, which feels nice but doesn't actually get you anywhere,
Mm.
right? And neither of those will really provide understanding. They're
Right.
both providing models, right? And the map is not the territory, right? The models are not the actual thing.
Yeah.
In order to learn that, you have to have the inner experience. You have to do it and
Hmm.
pay attention to what it's like, because you cannot separate yourself as the doer from the thing. You can't take that knowledge and write it down in either a beautiful piece of poetry or a scientific experiment or whatever. It's like it's gnosis. It's knowledge that can't be communicated. It must be gained through experience.
Hmm. And you mentioned going back again a little bit that you do this for business stuff as well. That is the first time I think I've ever heard of remote viewing being used as business as opposed to like what Joe McMoneagle is so well known for, using it in the military and using it for finding people and stuff like that. But to be able to
Well,
use
I
it
mean,
more
Joe's
than
done it for business plenty.
has he?
Yeah, he
I've
was
heard like
finding he
I've
was
heard so much
finding
just the
like
other
I can't remember
stories.
whether it was like coal seams or gold deposits or oil or that kind of thing.
I haven't heard
Um,
those
I mean,
stories.
that's something that people might be more familiar with is dowsing. That it's a very popular thing. If you're digging a well on your farm, you get a water witch, right? You get some old
Okay.
geezer with a big beard and a couple of sticks who comes and ooh, around the place, and God knows how he does it, but he will find exactly where to put the well, right?
Hmm.
And that that's really common practice. It's common in the construction industry. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of stigma around these kind of topics because people don't want to think they're crazy, and because this is intuitive information, right?
Hmm.
It's not There isn't an intellectual foundation. It's not like we should take this course of action in our business because we've done some research and we've got some numbers, and if this goes tits up and it turns out I wasted a whole bunch of budget on this stupid project, at least I can blame the statistics and I can blame the market research and I can cover my ass, right? But if you want to put forward an idea because a psychic told you to, it's all on you when it goes wrong, right? So
Hmm.
you do not want to be publicizing the fact that you're using this stuff. But like police forces use this extensively and don't publicize that fact for similar
Right.
reasons, right? Business people use it because business people don't care about woo woo or not woo woo or science or not science. They care about what actually works. And
Yeah.
they're inclined, successful business people take risks and accept that failure happens and it is a part
Hmm.
of finding success, right? So business people are more willing to experiment and be like, well, I'll try it, right? What's
Yeah.
it seems really unlikely, but it's not that expensive to test it. And if it works, I've got an edge, right?
Hmm.
And that's what you need, isn't it?
Right.
To be competitive is an edge.
Yeah.
So I can definitely give you that either by hiring remote viewers or just learning these skills yourself.
Hmm.
You can, well, the extreme, you can steal ideas out of the future, right? Or you can get insight into things like contract negotiations, or if you're thinking of hiring someone, like especially really senior positions where the vetting and background checking and stuff is really important to get right, and you've got worries about kind of espionage and conflicts of interest, and potentially if it turns out you've hired someone who's like got a terrible past that they've concealed, or all of these kind of risks. um, you can they said with the military project, right? Remote viewing can't replace spy satellites, but it can tell you where to point them.
Mm.
So what this will do, as a decision maker, whether that's business or law enforcement or whatever, you've got a million different things you could do in a day. There's more options than there is time or resources to try those things out. So what intuitive data will do is be like, oh, have a close look in this space, right? Here's an opportunity, and then go and match that up with reality and go test it against ground truth and see whether you can kind of see what the remote viewers or the psychics or whatever are talking about, and
Right.
that will help you kind of narrow down your options so that you're not like overwhelmed by, well, we've got a missing person and they could be in anywhere in like 10,000 hectares, and then you get a remote viewer and there's like, okay, well, there's a road bridge and there's a little valley and there's a dry riverbed and I can see a big chimney, and then you go on Google Maps and you've got it down to like a square mile
Hmm.
really quickly. Okay. So then, yeah, now go and search this area. It's only a square mile. It's not going to take long. We can
Hmm.
we can go look. And maybe the data's wrong, right? But you've kind of you've reduced the risk and you've allowed to like focus resources. So it's definitely not going to give you a 100% success rate, but it's going to give you better than chance, right? It's
Mm,
much better than throwing darts at a map, right?
right.
Or at a stock chart or whatever.
Yep. So, on like a regular daily basis, I imagine that you use this quite often for yourself, for your own life, your business. What
Yeah.
does that typically look like, a day in the life of David?
um, for me, I don't tend to do formal remote viewing sessions, my own stuff, because the remote viewing protocol is that you are blind to the target, right? So when it's your own stuff, you're not
Right.
blind to the target. You know what the question is.
Yeah.
So there, I would maybe ask my colleagues and be like, hey, can you check out this thing for me? And I won't bother giving them a target number. I'm just like, can you do me a thing? And they'll be like, yeah, sure. They'll just send me some stuff and, I'll see. Or a lot of the time, I'll just work in a kind of intuitive modality that's not remote viewing. Um,
Mm.
this can be really basic stuff, right? Like finding a parking space. Okay. It's great for finding parking spaces. It's great for choosing gifts. Where my wife wants lunch but can't decide what sandwich she wants, I can find the correct one.
Right.
Um, yeah.
That's amazing.
We were. Oh yeah, we said the other day. I was in your town, killing time with one of my kids in the bookshop, and there's
Yeah.
like a huge wall of books. There's like thousands of books, and she's trying to find ones that she likes, and she's only like so high and can't even see. So
Mm.
there, the way that I applied my intuition was, I was like, okay, what's going to be a book she'll really love? And I shut my eyes and was like, show me the book, and I just saw like a gold glowing kind of rectangle. And then I opened my eyes, see which book it's on top of, and I pulled the book off the shelf and it was called The Ministry of Magic. And I was like, damn, good
Perfect.
synchronicity. There you go. And she looked at it and was like, yeah, that sounds good. And it took it.
Aw.
So you can, yeah, you could save yourself a lot of time, right?
Hmm.
But you see, that's kind of like the where to point the spy satellites thing. You've got the
Right.
bookshelf, you're not looking at the books, close your eyes, where's the one, pick it up and
Hmm.
check, because maybe it's totally inappropriate. Maybe it's too young, too old, too rubbish looking. Maybe there isn't a book there. Maybe there's an ornament there and your
Hmm.
intuition's either off or it's telling you like stop buying books. She spent all her money, you know.
Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
you've got to reality test this stuff
Hmm.
as you go, and stay grounded and
Right.
not take silly risks based off it because it's never 100% accurate.
Right. That's fascinating. My mom always said that she has parking magic. That's what she calls it. She always gets the perfect parking space. Like
Do you
even if the
know?
town is like packed and she's trying to get to a restaurant and there's only street side parking, she'll get directly at the front door like every
Yeah.
single time. She's like, it's
My
my parking magic.
my wife's grandmother had the same thing, and she's passed away now. But they always her family would always take her shopping into the city with them when they wanted to go. They'd be like, "Hey, we're going shopping, Nan, come with us." And she's like, "I don't want anything." And they're like, "Yeah, but we need a parking space, right?" And so she'd be sat in the back of the car going, "You have finished your shopping. It is time to go home." And they would like the part, the clouds would part, and they would get a space. It's like some people really have that gift. It's good.
That's
I
amazing.
don't have that gift, but I can now find a space.
There you go.
So that's good. Obviously, finance is the obvious one for like people who want to make money.
Mhm.
Um, you can, but not out of thin air, right?
Mm.
I said there's sort of guardrails on reality for
Right.
want of I don't have a model for how that works. That's just a description of what we find when we try to win the 100 million lotto.
Mm.
Oh, we find that's a nope. If people want to go look up the Psychic Guys podcast on YouTube, I think it's episode 7 and 8 of that. We did like a couple of deep dives into making money with remote viewing and finance and associated remote viewing and the lottery and betting and stuff.
Mm.
And we had John Knowles come on as a guest, who is co-author of this massive book here, associative remote
Oh,
viewing for lottery and stuff with Deborah Lynn Katz, and he's been researching this stuff for years and years and years, and is a font of knowledge on the subject. So yeah, if people want to learn more about that, go check out the Psychic Guys. I think episodes 7 and 8, but they're called like winning the lottery or making money with remote viewing, all that sort of stuff.
amazing. I can post a link for that below the video too. That's great. The I've just started reading Liquid Luck. Have you heard of that book?
I
By
have, but I have not read it.
Joseph. this one here.
Yeah.
Um, and he talks about not remote viewing, but like manifesting things. But he does, like, he started out in the casinos. I'm like, that's the first time that I've been hearing about like this type of thing being connected to money or casinos or gambling or lottery. But it seems like every single thing that I'm hearing over these last 3 days is like same or similar, which is really funny because I've never heard that before. Typically, when exploring this stuff, it's all kind of been like spiritual woo woo. So it's like, oh, let's connect to your spirit guides
I
and
think
your
these things might seem to be different, but they're two sides of the same coin.
yes, yeah.
And I think mastering remote viewing where you're doing training targets all the time, which are like, oh, we're going to describe a statue or a bridge or a politician
Mhm.
or whatever it is. And you learn all these skills, right? But what you're learning while you do that is you're learning to trust your intuition. You're developing a working relationship between the conscious and subconscious minds, or
Mhm.
whatever part of us it is that does this. It's not the conscious mind anyway. The conscious mind and whatever else there is, wherever
Right.
this stuff comes from, you're building a working relationship where you can say, this is the information I want. It will respond and you will understand what it's saying and you will
Mhm.
have the confidence to just speak that or write it down or whatever. So
Right.
that there's this like nice, clean back and forth conversation going on. Right.
Mhm.
And when you develop that, when you then go over to do the spiritual woo woo stuff, right? And you're trying to talk to entities and gods and spirits and ghosts and spirit guides and whatever model you want to use and whatever stuff you want to get into, those skills of like discernment and the ability to interact with non-local information are really helpful because the spiritual world, the non-physical world is very much like the physical world in that its inhabitants are extremely varied in the quality of their character, right? And
Yes.
there is a lot of deceptive trickster kind of nonsense out there. And that
Mhm.
is generally the very first thing which people bump into when they go exploring in that space is things which are like, oh, I am the great God and I will punish you if you don't go and do all this stuff for me. And, if you keep going down that road, you end up with schizophrenia and it's not good, right?
Yep.
So you really got to watch out for that stuff. So
Yeah.
if you do remote viewing training, you're just describing really nice, safe things like clock towers and, you know, um, boats and stuff, right? And you're honing those skills in a way which is kind of um it's controlled and it's kind of clinical. You're getting feedback, so there's no self-deception. There's no kidding yourself. Like if you're wrong, you're wrong, and that's an opportunity to learn, right? But not an opportunity to be like, well, maybe this is a sign, maybe this means something. No, it's just wrong. Okay, so just go and do it again and keep practicing, right? Whereas when you don't have feedback, when you're dealing with the unverifiable and the subjective and the woo woo stuff, like it's really easy to get into a kind of mental tailspin
Mm.
where you're kind of losing touch with reality and um, because there's no grounding there, because it's full of ideas and content and voices um, and kind of information that you can just tap into, but most of it is not at all grounded in physical reality. So there's no way to kind of test the accuracy of this stuff at face value, right? And it's like a big cosmic game of he said, she said, and there's all this kind of chaos going on. And if you're not careful, you get sucked into that stuff. This is actually the definition of psychosis, which is
Mhm.
the inability to tell the difference between your inner experience and outer experience. And like it will corrode your worldview and lead you to become really ungrounded if you just kind of dive into all that unverifiable stuff without either having a sort of support system like a school or something you're working within, or developing these skills in a more controlled way. So yeah, I would recommend people learn remote viewing just to develop those skills. And
Right.
then, if you want to go practice ceremonial magic or shamanism or entity clearing or whatever it is, that will stand you in really good stead. It's kind of like
Mhm.
doing CrossFit, where it's going to make learning martial arts easier. Or
Right.
that's a terrible analogy, but you know what I mean, right? It's good foundational work.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are again with another one of my absolute favorite Ancient and Brave drinks. This is the True Nightcap. It's a warm, delicious drink that I've been having every evening in my subscription that I get because I get the collagen and cacao every single month. I've been getting that for several years now. And when you get a subscription, every few months you get a gift with that as well. And in one of those gifts, I got a sample pack of a couple of the drinks. And in that sample pack was the True Nightcap. So I got to try it. And I fell in love instantly and instantly ordered a full bottle of it to come with my next order. It's the best drink to have in the evening. This one's almost gone because I drink it every single night. You just take a scoop. You can see I really drink this. It's ginger and lemon. It's so yummy. I, of course, sweeten mine with maple syrup and then a bit of hot water. And I think you can have this cold as well. I've not yet had it cold because I enjoy it hot so much. So you just pour in your hot water and you've got a perfect warming, calming, absolutely delicious night drink. And one thing that I have personally noticed, and I've not looked too deep into this to see, I mean, I know that there's health benefits with both lemon and ginger, but I've noticed in myself that my digestion has been calming down. Like when I eat foods, I have problems with like a lot of bloating, and I'll feel really bloated in the night. And if I drink one of these before going to bed, I don't feel that. And maybe it's in my head, maybe it's not, but I feel like I wake up in the morning just feeling like skinnier, less bloated, just more clean and refreshed, and it's so yummy. And so I honestly do think that it's a connection because it started happening when I started drinking this every night. But even if that wasn't the case, this is such a calm, beautiful drink to have every evening. And you can get your first bottle of True Nightcap for 20% off using my code Emma Elizabeth and the link below this video. So give it a try. It's so delicious. And if you have somebody who has issues with bloating like me, try it out. It might work for you. It might not. It's not meant to, I don't think, but it does work for me. And that might be just a really positive, amazing bonus that you get with it. So enjoy your True Nightcap, and I'll see you later. Absolutely. So if somebody were to begin studying remote viewing today, it's not like they need to be meditating for an hour and this and that. It's a completely different thing. It's can you explain that in a bit
Sure.
better of a way?
So it's a common misconception that remote viewing is some sort of meditative state or meditative technique, or that it requires altered states of consciousness, none of which are true. Although there's like an element of truth or there's relevance there, but none of those things are required to conduct a remote viewing session. You want to be in a relaxed state. But if you've, well, I'm sure everybody has at some point sat on the sofa and vegged out in front of the TV at the end of a hard day and gone, and got in that kind of chilled out, not doing anything with my head. I am a potato embodied. That state, right? Which is an alpha brainwave state. Um, it's just relaxed. It's not trancy. It's not mind awake, body asleep. There's nothing weird going on. You're just chilled out. That's all you need. Um, if people are not familiar with the sort of named brainwave states, the lowest frequencies are delta waves, which are associated with sleep, but also like healing and intuition and stuff. But you get a lot of delta when people are in deep sleep. Um, and then there's the theta band, which is kind of a trance state in like shamanic drumming is at those frequencies, and if you're going on a visionary kind of experience, you would expect to find a lot of theta. Then you've got your alpha, you're relaxed awake. Then you've got beta, and beta is the state that you're in when you're doing your taxes. Beta is very engaged and analytical, and it's kind of a little overly sharp. Um, but above the frequency range of beta, you have a very wide band called gamma, which goes right up to the very high frequencies, particularly in experienced meditators. That again is associated with like transpersonal experience and deep insight and psychic events and that's that sort of stuff. Um, in a remote viewing session, I think you would be likely to see spikes of theta and gamma and delta, right? That these are not individual discrete states. You're not like either in a deep trance or you're awake, right? These are um, little notes that you can hear in the symphony of brainwaves sometimes. Okay, so we don't need to be in any kind of weird state. We can use those weird states, right? I think probably the second or third most common question that I get is about drugs because people want to know partly, can I take some substance which is going to make me psychic? And partly, like, what's the deal with people having these like really intense veridical experiences, particularly taking psychedelics, where they might have telepathy with somebody else, which they kind of later they compare notes and it's like, holy shit, we were having the same inner experience and we just can't explain that. We were seeing the same things. And
Mhm.
or you can have like premonitions and dreams. Or all these kind of events which happen either asleep or drugs or trance or stuff, and so yeah, those states certainly you can have really intense experiences in them and you can use them in remote viewing. But like if you drink a lot of alcohol and then get behind the wheel of a car, you are going to be way better at drifting your car and doing handbrake turns and doing crazy shit. You can have a really intense experience, but drinking alcohol does not make you a better driver, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay, so just because you can have an intense experience in an altered state doesn't mean that it's the right way if you want to have a controlled, precise experience where you're getting accurate data.
Right.
Um, it's fun, sure, like why not? But um, don't drink and drive, kids. But like if you just want to get some data about, I would say, product development, right? This is, we don't need an immersive vision quest kind of experience to do this.
Mhm.
The customer already knows what their product looks like. They don't need you to draw a picture of it, right? Or commune with its consciousness. They want to tell you how to debug the bit that isn't working so they can get the thing to market. And
Mhm.
that is an analytical process, right? That's using the intellect and the left brain and the prefrontal cortex and the wide awake, sensible, logical adult cognition, right? So
Right.
if you're going to get into an altered state, yes, you're going to have a greater potential for more immersive, intense experiences. Like extended remote viewing was one of the very earliest forms of remote viewing they practiced at SRI, where they would lie down and have a nap. This is much more common with the Monroe Institute kind of altered states through binaural beats and their Monroe Sound Science that they've
Mhm.
got now, where you are in an altered state and your body is very, very relaxed and the intellectual functions are downregulated, right? You're not so analytical, you're not so judgmental, you're not labeling so much. And that opens you up to having like a higher bandwidth of data. So you will have really great visual experiences often, right? You'll be able to see your target so clearly that you can identify it in seconds and be like,
Right.
oh yeah, I know what this is. I know what I'm looking at, which is maybe what people imagine when they hear remote viewing. They think it's just like turning a TV on, which when you're doing this from an awake state, it absolutely isn't.
No.
You're like, oh, what color is it? Can I feel any shapes in here? It's really very low bandwidth, getting really small pieces of data and slowly building up a bigger picture. Whereas when you get into those altered states, you might get loads of data at once, but you're not able to be as analytical and logical about it. Whereas what's more useful for practical purposes is to be awake and to be analytical, to be logical, and to be able to examine your data. I've got a box, and if you're in a trance state, you'd be like, "Wow, look at this cool box." And then you report, there's a cool box. Look, I drew it. It's got this nice picture on the top. There you go. But if you're awake, you're like, okay, let's open the box. Let's see what's inside the box. Where does it come from? Who does it belong to? Where is it going in the future? What's its timeline? What used to be in it? What was the function of its original manufacture? You can ask all these questions and you can build up a much richer, detailed picture.
Mhm.
And I've got totally sidetracked by altered states there. What were we on about before?
No, it was great. Something along the lines. My next
Oh,
question.
meditation. Yes,
Oh,
I
yes.
should
Yeah, yeah,
address
yeah.
that. Yeah. No, you don't. If you meditate every morning, it will make everything in your life better, including your remote viewing practice. Like it's a has also been described as a martial art for the mind, right? This is a attention management discipline. So
Mhm.
if you train your mind and make it more disciplined and more pliable, and more flexible, and more willing and able to do what you want it to do, then yeah,
Mhm.
when you try and do things with it, it will be better at it. But
Right.
that's yeah, remote viewing is not meditation, but meditation will help. Just like getting fit helps you learn
Yeah.
martial arts, getting
Yeah.
flexible helps you learn martial arts, but they're not the same thing.
Right. So for somebody with ADHD or like myself, who
No
just has
problem.
a million thoughts going through her head all the time, all the time, all the time, having the meditation practice can help that because it helps to calm the thoughts, but you don't necessarily need it to connect, right?
We cannot even say that you do connect. We might have a feeling of being connected, or a
Okay.
feeling of not being connected, or a feeling of
Mhm.
how do I connect? I can't connect. And maybe there is a real connection, maybe there isn't.
Mhm.
This is not even
It's not even
provable, let alone
close.
proven, I don't think.
Right.
So on that level, the first barrier there is just thoughts and ideas about the need for a connection and how you might notice it. Or
Mm.
usually what happens is people get halfway through remote viewing and they start thinking, oh, I feel like I'm not connected. I can't feel like, no, I'm not connected. And they start repeating this flipping mantra to themselves about how much they're failing, which obviously doesn't
Okay.
help. Um, ADHD, absolutely not a barrier. It may even help. There's not been any research on this as far as I know, specifically amongst remote viewers, but I moderate a really large community of remote viewers on Discord that's like 4,000 people or something. So a
Ooh.
lot of people who are new to the subject kind of show up and go like, oh, I was on Reddit and I saw a link to this and blah, blah, blah. I'm really curious and I did the Silver Method or I did Monroe or I saw Third Eye Spies or something and like, oh, I tried it and it works. That's crazy. So I'm here to learn more. So, I hear a lot of different people's early experiences with remote viewing and kind of how they got into it and stuff. And out of the experienced remote viewers I know, people with ADHD are like way overrepresented. It's really noticeable.
Wow.
And I think I'm not 100% clear on the research here, so take this with a pinch of salt. But I think there's something about people with ADHD actually have an excess of theta bound brainwaves compared to people without ADHD. And the theta is your shamanic trance thing, right? Very prone to imagination and non-linear thinking and seeing lots of connections between things and kind of just being a little bit less bolted down into a rigid ordered framework of thinking. So it may be that actually the same changes in the brain or the mind which cause the cluster of symptoms which we label as ADHD might also have the effect of making us more open to these ideas, more able to do it, more prone to having anomalous experiences, maybe some
Mm.
combination of those, but it is
Right.
definitely not a barrier. And another thing which is not a barrier is taking medication for ADHD
Mm.
or anything. I mean, I've known one remote viewer in particular. He got into real serious mental health kind of like acute bad stuff going on, and they put him on like the absolute most hellish psychiatric drugs ever, but were just like awful zombie pills, and he could still remote view, right? So if people are taking stimulants for ADHD or antidepressants or whatever other psychiatric pills,
Mm-hmm.
um, that may or may not necessarily be a healthy thing to do, but it's kind of neither here nor there when it comes to psychic functioning, right?
Interesting.
So people don't need to totally come off medication or become vegan or
Mm-hmm.
go only eat sunshine and stuff, like you do. People. Yeah, you don't need to be sober. You don't need to have a good diet. Um, all of these things help making yourself healthy and strong and self-aware is good. But
Hmm.
you're, I think it is in the nature of the human being that our consciousness is not created by the brain and is not bounded by the body. So this isn't like here's this human, this sack of meat and bones and brain and nerves and stuff, and it has some sort of evolved ability to zap outwards to another place and get information and bring it back. It's like actually this is not the boundary of us as a being. We're potentially everywhere all the time.
Well, should we go ahead and do a test run then? Or an example go. I really, really enjoyed how you explained everything the other day and just really, really broke it down into all of those pieces. Because before, when I was trying remote viewing, like with those links and at the weird experience and everything, I was trying to see a picture. And of course, I was wrong like every single time. But the way you broke it down to like sight, smell, colors, all of that, it was just absolutely incredible. And it helped me to really, I mean, you saw, I think I did pretty good.
Yeah.
Two out of three did really well. Yeah, it was amazing. So I loved that. So if you want to start going into the explanation of that, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, do you have a pen and paper?
I do. I'm ready.
Cool. Right. And yeah, anybody listening or watching on YouTube, you can play along at home here.
Yes.
Um, so we're going to do a remote viewing experiment. If you've got some plain paper and a pen and somewhere to write, and preferably haven't got children throwing food around and screaming and swinging from the chandeliers, you're in a relatively quiet, relaxed environment, but just a pen and paper is all you need to get going. So, uh, right, I'm going to walk you through doing a remote viewing target. There is a target. There is something that I'm going to show you when we're done, and you get to see whether you were right or not. I'm not going to tell you anything about the target before we begin. You get no information. You can't cheat. So if you describe it really well, you know it's because you successfully did non-local awareness. And our goal here is not to name the target. Okay, you're not going to get points for telling me what it is. You're getting points for describing it. So we're only going to use adjectives, describing words to describe the target, no nouns, right? So if you find yourself saying it's a this, it's a that, or it's like a one of these, or if you see mental imagery that is like full color, just like your imagination, where you can see what's going on, it's moving, everything's identifiable, you can place a label upon all the things that you're seeing, that's probably your imagination. When you find yourself making comparisons or saying it's a this, um, the in the jargon of controlled remote viewing, we call that analytical overlay. So at some level, we're aware of what the target is like. And then part of our perceptual mechanism in our mind is to kind of pattern match. So let's give an example here. And this is not what your target is going to be. So don't let me plant ideas in your head here. But say I was running this remote viewing experiment with you, and your target was an orange, a fruit, right? So it's circular and it's orange and it's bright and maybe it makes you think of summertime. So it's got these sorts of descriptive properties, but somewhere as we go through the remote viewing session, it pops up in your head. It's a beach ball, right? And that idea will get stuck because the ego wants to be right. Um, and once the perceptual system assigns a label to something, uh, it's quite happy to just leave it there. Okay, it's quite happy to say, I've worked out what that is now. I don't need to look at it anymore. It has all the properties that I know beach balls to have because I've seen a beach ball before. So I'm done caring about that. So the effect will be that any subsequent data that you get about the target will be filtered through that idea of beach ball. And if it doesn't match, it will get thrown out. So you'll start saying, it's hollow inside and it's bouncy and I can hear children playing and it's sandy and it smells like fish and seaweed and I can feel the breeze and I can hear the sea, right? So you started off accurate, and then the pattern matching part of the perceptual system comes up with a guess, which is wrong, but it matches the real target. It is round and it is orange and it is kind of fun and it is maybe a bit summery, um, but it's not what the target is. So we're going to work down the left hand side of the page. If you notice a noun, it is a something, or it's like a something, or if you find yourself writing noun with a question mark after it, whatever, put that all down the right hand side of the page. So it's important to acknowledge this stuff, okay? We're not going to repress it. We're not going to go, no, that's wrong. Don't think of nouns, because you cannot get rid of a thought by pushing it away. In order to attempt to repress a thought, you actually have to cling on to it, because otherwise you don't know what thought it is you're repressing. So what we do is we approach it with neutrality and unconditional acceptance, right? It is just something which has arisen in our mind. So we're going to go through sensory information. We're going to describe color and texture and smell and stuff. And we're going to write down our AOLs, our nouns, our comparisons, our analytical stuff, our guesses, our imagination. We're going to stick that down the right hand side. We're not going to try and repress it. Just write it down as soon as you notice it. Try and write things down in order. So you're going down the left and then you have a guess, you put it to the right, and then you go back over, carry on down the left. Do this so that you can see what order things happened in your session, so that you can kind of play it back and go back through it and say, oh, yeah, you see, I described it as squishy, and that's what made me think it was a beach ball, right? So I'm going to guide you through this, and we're going to go really quickly, because the imagination takes a second or two to kick in. So if the first question I'm going to ask you is, what color is it? Right? And there's 1 second after that question mark where you can just know, or hear a word, or perceive a color, or have the feeling of a color, the knowing of a color, but very, very quickly. And it could feel very subtle. We're not expecting fireworks here. Just write whatever pops into your mind. If nothing pops into your mind, make something up, but within 1 second. Okay, and get it written down. And then we'll move on in that way. We'll do questions until we get bored, or until Emma is looking sad and crying and throwing a paper. And so here we go. I have a target for us to do here. So I'm going to read the number for you. Write this down at the top of your page. But don't worry if you get it wrong, because it doesn't do anything, right? It's just for matching up to the targets later. So your target is 2799-1223. 2799-1223. So first of all, what color is it? Get something really quickly. Don't try. First thing that pops into your head. Are there any other colors? What are the main colors here? Now let's look at texture. So you can take your non-dominant hand, the one you don't write with, and stick it out in the air in front of you, and just imagine that you're going to gently run your hand over whatever this is and feel the texture. And we're not magicking up a copy of the target in our room here. We're using our body to give a really nice, clear instruction to our subconscious mind as to what we're interested in. So feel what the texture feels like. And if you feel any shape or form related stuff, you can write that down too. Next, let's look at the temperature. So if you walk into the next room, you'll feel that the temperature is very slightly different, or maybe it's very different. But even if it's only like 0.5 of a degree warmer or cooler, as you walk through the door, you can feel really clearly which one's warmer and which one's cooler. Whereas if I ask you, what temperature is it in your room right now, you can't necessarily tell very accurately just from how you're feeling. whether you're feeling cold or warm. Like it's a bit harder to put an absolute quantity on it. And it turns out with remote viewing, many of the things that you will be asked to describe are basically at room temperature or like normal kind of temperature ranges. Not everything is a boiling inferno or in the Arctic or something, right? So the temperature is often not that dissimilar from your temperature right now. So we will try to perceive the temperature in a relative way. So to do that, imagine there's a tiny little, about 6 inch square window in front of you, and on the other side of it is the target. So get your non-dominant hand and hold it in the air just in front of that window and pay attention to how warm it feels. Just how warm is it in the room right now? And then stick your fingers through the window. Does it feel cooler or warmer? What does it feel like? Write down anything you feel. And then you can pull your hand back out through the window. What does it feel like in here and in? Because the difference could be very subtle. So to be able to kind of go on, off like that, you can pick up on these really subtle differences, even though it might be hard to detect absolute differences. Now let's do taste. What does it taste like? And you can stick your tongue out and lick it, if you
My
like.
like jaw
This
just
will.
locked up. Like, ooh.
So a little aside here. Here's a weird thing that you can observe. If you look around your room that you're in or the space that you're in right now, you will find that there is nothing in your space that your tongue does not know what it would be like if you licked it. Your tongue knows what everything is like to lick, which is really odd. But I challenge anybody to find something in their space that they don't know what it would be like to lick, right? So when you're asking kind of like what does it taste like, be aware that your tongue will provide a lot of sensory information about like chemical kind of activity, about gases, about pressure. Um, when I do this taste thing is often the point where I notice if a target is underwater. Because if you go swimming deep under the water and you open your mouth and like all the water rushes in, like I have that sensation and go, oh right, we're underwater, okay. Or maybe you're in outer space and all the air is sucked away. This is the kind of the opposite sensation. So just be open to other sorts of information that are not just like, is it sweet or salty or bland? Right? There's a whole load of information that we get from our senses. Next, we'll do sound. Again, this one can be a little tricky because it's never silent. There's always some background noise. If you've got noise cancelling headphones on, like I have, there's still a little hiss. We can hear little noises that our bodies are making, even if we're not consciously aware of it. There's background noise. There's all sorts of noise going on. So again, instead of looking at the absolute sound, we're going to pay attention to the difference between just what we hear in our room and what we hear in our room plus what we hear at the target, and make sure that we separate those two out. So if you get your pen and imagine on the nib of your pen is a tiny little loudspeaker, like one earphone, and that's going to play for you whatever the sounds are at the target. So if you hold it near your ear, you can hear the target. And if you move it away, now you can't. And you can use this to kind of switch it on, switch it off, and pay attention to the really subtle differences. Give that a quick try. Pay attention also to the sense of acoustic, because if you walk into a cathedral, even if it's very quiet inside the cathedral, the acoustic, just the tiniest background noises bouncing around in that space, provides your brain with information about the space. The size, are there lots of flat, hard surfaces, reflecting sound? What's the quality of any echoes? Likewise, if you go into a cave does not have the same acoustic as a cathedral or a concert hall or an outdoor space or a forest. So even though we don't necessarily consciously pay attention to this information in our daily life, it is actually there. So pay attention to what the acoustic of the site is telling you. Let's do smells. Give it a sniff. Again, this isn't just about aroma. What's the sensation of sniffing the air at the site like? Maybe it's very dry or wet or chemical or bland, or maybe it smells like tasty food, or maybe it smells like nothing at all. What's your reaction if you were to be there and give it a good sniff? Okay. Next, let's move on to shape and form. So we're not trying to get a picture of the target that we know what it is, right? If you see a fully formed image and you go, I know what that is, it's probably going to be incorrect. So write that down over the right-hand side of the page. Don't dwell on it. Just acknowledge it. Make sure you write everything down. Don't suppress anything. Don't second guess yourself. Just get it down on the page. So we're going to start by looking at really simple elements of shape and form. So anything to do with 3D space. So that's like size and shape and the relationship between things. So take your non-dominant hand, the one you don't write with, again, and hold it out flat, very gently, a little up in the air. And then just relax your muscles until it starts to fall. So we want to be really gentle. Kind of imagine you're in a flotation tank, you're just hovering. And at some point, it's going to bump into the target and you'll feel just a little resistance, like holding two of the same pole of a magnet together or something, like just a gentle push or maybe a little tingle or something, but you'll feel an edge. And then take your hand or just point one finger out and see if you can trace a contour in the air. See if you can feel a shape. And this can be really simple. So if you can feel a shape, just sketch it down really simply. Probably just like one line on the page just to show the contour. You could maybe shade a little bit to show this is the solid bit, that's the outside. Now take your hand and try to stick it right through the target and see what it feels like inside. Is it like a solid, homogeneous thing that's got the consistent density all the way through? Or is it hollow? Do you feel any elasticity or vibration or movement? If you give it a push, does it like shake and wobble, or is it very firm, or does it move? Just explore and use your body, use that non dominant hand to kind of poke and prod and examine the thing. So by doing that, because we spend our whole lives from our very first moments on Earth exploring the world through touch and manipulating tools and eating food and stuff with our hands, it's such a natural way for us to explore reality. So when we reach out our hand to touch something, we're sending a really clear signal to our mind and our perceptual system that that is the data that we're very interested in. Right? Because 99% of the time when we do that, we're doing so because we want to touch something, we want to feel it, right? So really, we're using the body as a really nice, clear shorthand to communicate to our subconscious mind. And if you're there now feeling shapes in the air, that is your subconscious answering the question that you've asked, right? So this is kind of the mechanism of how using dowsing rods or pendulums or something works. Those tools don't work if they're not in your hands. Okay, you can't hang a pendulum on a hook and put a glass jar over it, and it will work the same as if you hold it in your hand. But also, people are not deliberately moving these things. They do appear to move on their own. And this is because there are parts of us that we are not consciously aware of, which will be exerting influence on the body. And these are the interesting psychic, non local parts of us. Conscious mind is not the psychic bit. So let's see if we can find any more shapes or forms. I think we're only going to do one of these today. So we'll do a couple more things and try and get our money's worth.
Mhm.
So next uh, we're going to look at a thing called aesthetic impact, which is the combined overall feeling and impression that you have from being at the target. And again, we're going to do this in a relative rather than an absolute sense because our body feels like something right now, even if we're sitting, we're relaxing, or whatever activity we're doing. There's emotions in our body, there's tension in our body, there's motion. Maybe you're feeling hungry, maybe you're somewhere very warm or very cold or very noisy. There's all this stuff going on in your immediate surroundings right now. And what we want to look at is what it would feel like if you were at the target. So if you're going to bake a cake or some bread or something, right? You get your kitchen scales, you put the bowl on, and then you press the zero button or you adjust it to zero, right? You cancel out the bowl, you tear the scales. So that's what we're going to do with our body, okay? By just taking a moment, close our eyes, get centered, take a breath, and really take stock of how's my body feeling. Pay particular attention to the chest area, whether there's any emotions that might be sitting, but just generally become really aware of what's going on in there. So we're establishing a baseline here because in a moment we're going to see what it would be like to suddenly find ourselves at the target. And we're going to pay attention to what changes in that inner feeling. So we're going to do a little like a hypnotic induction technique here. It's very, very straightforward, where we're going to imagine we're in a hallway and we're going to throw open a door. And when we do, the target will be the other side. So now please imagine the most boring business hotel corridor you have ever seen and make it more dull. It is grey, it is sensorially very neutral, and at the end is a fire exit, which will allow you to escape from this dull and boring place and experience your target. So take a few steps up towards the door and then throw it open quickly. Pay attention to how it feels in your body when you do. How do you react to the space? How do you react emotionally to that? You can try this more than once, and you can try it by giving yourself the prompt. If I were at the target right now, how would I feel? Or how would I react? So you might get quite a lot of data here. Some of it might be emotional, some of it might be spatial, some of it might be aesthetic. Maybe it's very beautiful. Maybe you've just appeared in the middle of a busy road and you have a feeling, I need to get out of the way, this is dangerous. Or maybe you've seen something very beautiful. Maybe you're in a big open space or a very confined space. See how you feel about this. Okay. And now, last thing before we wrap up, I promise. Now, please write down anything which you would regret having not written down in a moment when I tell you what the target was. Anything that's on your mind, anything you suppressed, or just ask yourself, what's the best thing for me to write down now? We want to just clear out anything that hasn't quite made it onto the page. We'll get it all done. And then when you finish that, just write end, end session underneath. And if you would like to be very organized, you may grab yourself a different color of pen to go back through your session and compare, see how you did. So if you just give me a moment here, I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Oh, I'm not able to share. Emma, could you give me permission to
Oh,
share?
ah, there we go. I think that's it. Should be
I
able
got
to.
it. Yep, I got it. Okay, here we go. So can you see that okay?
Yep.
So here's your feedback, 2799-1223. And this is the Wave in Arizona, which is this beautiful rock formation where there's these amazing folds in the rock that have been eroded in this crazy curving pattern. So there's a bit of blue, but the main color here is like orange and yellow and beige with loads of naturalistic curves. If anybody got an impression of water, um, that's not accurate to the photo, which was what you were supposed to describe, but I think it is important for this target. And the very wavy nature of this might have led you to think of water, despite this not being a wet thing.
So I got red, yellow, black, which I guess the shadows, and orange. And I got smooth and bumpy, which I guess stone. I mean, that looks like super smooth and then like really bumpy in bits.
I think
Like,
it's a kind of sandstone, so it's
right?
like bumpy at the macro level, but then I think if you rub your
Yeah,
finger
and
on it, it's probably kind of rough. Like,
that's what I was like. I even drew like really, really tiny, teeny, tiny little bumps. Um, I kept smelling like plastic or rubber though. I don't know where that would come from. And then I said slightly cooler in temperature, but then when we did the hand thing, I was like, nope, that's not right. It was slightly warmer. And I got rubber, plastic, sour, bitter, petrol. I don't know where any of those came from. Those ones don't seem to fit. But then I got echo, like very echoey. I got screeching shoes. Like I think I was picturing like a baseball court or something with the blue, or not with the blue, with the orange and the blacks. I was seeing like stripes as well. That was another thing, like
hmm.
stripes.
So you see
Like I
baseball
drew.
as like a label, it's a noun, isn't it, that you
Right,
associate
right. So that's why I
with
was
with
like,
those
oh, I gotta
things.
stay away from that.
No, no, no,
Um,
you don't have to stay away from it, right? Just
I
acknowledge it.
did. I wrote it
Because
down. I acknowledged it.
yeah,
I'm like, okay, get out of my head. Um, round lines, small circles. I was trying to describe like the teeny, teeny, tiny, bumpy feeling that I was feeling. Like what I was picturing was like you have a smooth, big basketball, but like the skin of it is actually all those teeny, tiny
oh,
little
the
bumps.
dimpled surface.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I was feeling. And then sunlight, open, spacious, happy, free, and relaxed.
Nice. Oh, that was pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad. The basketball thing. And then I was like, well, maybe it's apple trees. And then I'm like, no, stop.
Okay. Don't be negative about it. Don't be giving it no, stop, get out of my head. Um approach it gently and kind of with acceptance. So the more productive bearing to have towards those guesses and AOLs is like, thank you, analytical system, for that great suggestion. Look, I've written it down. You saw me write it down. You know it's important to me. And
Yeah.
I've made a record of your important and good thinking. So there we go. Now I'm going to carry on. Another thing you can do with them is we're looking for, at this stage, right? We're looking for low level data. We're looking for descriptive words like rough. We're not looking for labels like basketball. So when we have a guess that's like interpretive or analytical, it's probably because there's correct data that's below our level of awareness. You know, the
Mhm.
word subliminal, like there's this idea there's the limit, the line between the conscious and the unconscious. So the
Right.
accurate information about the target, like that it's dimpled and kind of orange color and associated with a lot of echoes, like a basketball, right? That's down there outside of the conscious. And at some point, it's as on its way up, it gets matched with the concept of basketball. And then it's the basketball that makes it up above the limit, right? But
Right.
we can kind of chase it back down. We can take the basketball and we can pull on the strings and we can find that data just by asking ourselves, what about the target is it which reminds me of a basketball?
Mm.
Right. And that's just like asking, what color is it? What texture is it? But
Yeah.
now, what basketballiness is it? And we
Hmm.
go, oh, it's rough, it's dimpled, it's kind of orange, it's associated with echoes. There you go. You just got like four perfectly accurate data points because you're keeping it nice and low level and descriptive.
Hmm.
And you understood why you've made that kind of labeling judgment too. So if you get in the habit of doing that all the time in your session, whenever you get a guess, where that come from? Why is it like this? What made me think of that? Then over time, the effect of that will be that you'll get the accurate data straight up. It will,
Mhm.
you'll be learning your own language. You'll be learning what those perceptions feel like. And
Right.
next time something dimpled and echoey and orange comes up, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's dimpled and echoey and orange. And you won't have to go via this convoluted route with a basketball, right? You'll just know.
Yep.
So that's a good way to improve, is to approach those things with acceptance and also curiosity.
I like that a
Cool.
lot. One thing that I noticed was I realized I was starting to describe like a basketball on a basketball court. But then I realized my first colors that I wrote down weren't even orange. I'm like, what am I doing? And that's exactly what I did. I kind of pulled myself back to the colors and I was like, okay, well, I do see orange, but actually it's not a ball. It's something else. And that's where like I was able to get into like happy, free, spacious, sunlight, and all of those other things. So that was interesting. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, you did well.
Thank you.
I hope people listening have done well, or had some kind of interesting experience here. I guess if people could, I just go on YouTube. Could people put stuff in the comments
Yeah,
and
yeah,
share
yeah.
their experience?
Absolutely. It'd be great to see people's experiences down in the comments.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this, David. This was incredible. Is there any other bits that you want to kind of close up with?
Um, oh, I don't know what is going on. Um, if you want to know what is going on, do check out my website, which is intuitiveops.pro, intuitiveops.pro, and we'll put the link underneath because that has my upcoming events. So I don't. Oh no, I think I do have another like open RV beginners class, like the one that you did, Emma, coming up.
Oh,
I think this month, which is either free or very inexpensive.
okay.
So if people want to have a go at this and try it a bit more with me, then you
Mhm.
could come to that. There's some links up there for more information. We'll get some. I will send you some links to put in the description as well, so people can find Second House Remote Viewing Group and the Psychic Guys podcast and all that other stuff.
Yep.
If people want to dig a bit deeper,
Awesome.
if people would just like to research the topic of remote viewing, check out the movie Third Eye Spies, which is usually for free on YouTube.
Okay.
Or you'll be able to find it somewhere, which is it's like a fun introduction to the US military psychic spying program stuff, and there's a lot of history and parapsychology stuff in there. It's a cool movie. If you want the comedy version, you could watch the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, although that's perhaps
Um,
less educational and more entertaining. And then there is a website, remoteviewing.link, which is just like a lightly curated collection of everything that we could find about remote viewing over the whole internet that just people submit stuff to. So there's a million links on there. There's movies, there's books, there's articles, there's training courses and videos and interviews, and just like there's so much stuff, and it's not really curated for quality. It's just like, here's all of it. So if you want to do a deep dive and kind of explore the territory, remoteviewing.link is a great place to start. And we should put that link down there too.
Yep, absolutely. Excellent. Well, this was incredible. Thank you so much. And you said that you have an event coming up. What's the event?
I don't know. Let me check. I'm just trying to remember. I got quite a few things coming up. Let me visit my own website and see. Okay. So next, I don't know how soon this is going to go out, but February 7th, I'm doing a lecture at the ICRL, which is like the successor to the Pear Lab, which was a early and really important parapsychology research unit at Princeton University.
Mhm.
And ICRL is like kind of their spiritual successor. And I'm doing a talk on like what can we learn about consciousness from remote viewing? Like, how can we or can we infer anything about like the nature of being human and what our consciousness is and how it works from examining what happens when we do non-local perception compared to our normal, like everyday waking perception. And then again, yeah, here it is, February 15th, another remote viewing beginners workshop again with ICRL. If you go to intuitiveops.pro, the link is there. You can go and go to their sign up page. I don't know whether that's it's either free or very inexpensive, so come to that. And that is it for like beginner workshops at the moment. I will be giving some classes with IRVA, the International Remote Viewing Association, in April, I think, but those are going to be more like master classes on associated remote viewing for finance and the stuff for people who've already got a bit more experience. So, other than that, if anybody is attending the Monroe Institute UK's Gateway experience either in March or June, I will be doing some remote viewing stuff for both of those. March, I'm going to be there in person, so it'll be Gateway experience during the day, and then if people's heads haven't exploded from all of the crazy insights and amazing experiences all day, then if people have got some energy left, remote viewing in the evening. And then June, I don't know whether I'm going to be there in person. I might just be attending over Zoom, so I'm not sure which one that's going to be yet. But again, I'll be there doing something remote viewing. So if anybody's attending those, which you should because they'll be amazing, then you can catch me there too.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, David. This was incredible, and I am a little bit pleased with myself again. I loved
Yeah,
this. This was
you
great.
did great and under pressure as well.
I know, I know. I was freaking out and I was trying not to say anything because then I would jinx myself into it more. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna go with it. Just go with it. But you
Yeah.
did good. Well done. Well, thank you so much, and we'll
No, thank you
definitely
so much for having me on. It's been great. It's been really fun.
thank you so. So I will speak to you later and definitely see you at one of your next little workshops.
Wonderful. All right.
All right.
Goodbye then.
Bye.